I don't just talk about other people's stuff, I also make my own. Books in particular. To date, I have 4 books you can check out on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and the short story collection Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Hop on down to the description for Amazon links to all 4 books. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Omni viewer, and I'm once again going to do just a quick little review of some Godzilla figures I happened to find at Target. In this case, they are a couple of Super7 ReAction figures. I've known these have existed for quite a while. I just didn't bother getting them right away because, well, no particular reason. I just don't necessarily want to go spending things willy-nilly is all. But I happened to see these 2 in the store. There were only 2 Rodans and 1 Jet Jaguar. So I thought, why not? May as well pick them up and see how they turned out. So this is how they come in the packaging. You can see they've got the ads on the back for the other figures, the Mothra, the Mechagodzilla, and the 2 other Godzillas. If I like how these turn out, I may get the rest one day, but for right now, let's open these and see how they turned out. We shall start with Rodan. And as you can see, this is not the 1956 Rodan, it's the 1964 onward Rodan, so later Showa. And right off the bat, we can see how this is a figure that's clearly designed to have more of a toyetic kind of look. Now, those of you who tuned in for when I did the review of the Playmates Toho series Shin Godzilla, the second take, I was pretty harsh on it, but that's because the Toho series, despite a rough beginning, had finally gotten to a point where they had a certain standard of quality. And the Shin Godzilla figure fell so far from that standard of quality that it just wound up looking terrible. Now, with the ReAction figures, though, they're meant to have more of a retro action figure look. I'm pretty sure that's where the name even comes from. Ergo, putting this Rodan side beside the Mezco Rodan, which is the same design but clearly different layer of detail, you can tell the Mezco Rodan has more textured skin, more paint gradient, just overall more detail, and it's a little bit bigger. Whereas this Rodan has smoother skin, little bit of gradient on the wings, but mostly solid colors, and the paint isn't necessarily film accurate. In fact, let's see. There's a lot of orange on this guy, which is just not present on the movie Rodan, specifically the belly spikes, the claws, the beak, the horns, those weird things on his face, whatever those are called. But in a weird way, they kind of add to the overall look of the figure. It doesn't necessarily look bad, is what I'm saying. And in terms of articulation, let's see. He can turn his head pretty much all the way around. His legs can turn like that. And of course, his wings can go back and forth for sort of a flapping motion, as you can see. If he's angled the wrong way, then his wings will pull him backward. But otherwise, he seems pretty well balanced. And overall, he is recognizable as Rodan. He's got the little 3-forked tail there, the ridge running down the back. It's not a bad-looking figure by any stretch of the imagination, and being a Rodan fan, I'm pretty... I can be pretty hard to please when it comes to good Rodan figures, but overall I would say this is definitely a better-looking one. So, Rodan certainly gets a pass. And now we have Jet Jaguar, the third-rate Ultraman himself. Now, Jet Jaguar definitely lends himself much easier to a toy design than Rodan or any other kaiju, really, because he basically is a giant action figure in the movie. Multicolored, really toyetic looking, but in ReAction figure form, yeah, it lends itself pretty well. It's got the standard movement of the legs, arms, and head. But we're talking about overall design here. When I saw him in the package, I have to say I was a little bit worried about the feet because, as you can see, they don't look quite like they sit flat and they're kind of bowing inward a little. So I was worried about whether or not he'd be able to stand. But as you can see, he stands just fine, actually. In fact, he looks surprisingly movie accurate for the style they're going for. It's not exact, of course. Clearly, the proportions are just a little bit different. But also, he's got good balance. Yeah, Jaguar looks good as well. The only other ReAction figure I have to compare these guys to is the Shogun Godzilla. That was perhaps the first Godzilla figure that Super 7 released, which also pretty much set the standard for what the rest of the figures would be like because it's literally an action figure of an action figure. How meta can you get? And obviously taking into account that Shogun Godzilla is not based on anything from the movies and has stuff like this thing sticking out of his head, alongside the other ReAction figures, not a bad look. I would say that just going into this blind and not knowing how these figures would turn out, they turned out pretty well. Again, they're not to the same level as something like Mezco or Bandai or something, but that's not really what they're going for. What they're going for is something that's a bit more retro, a bit more nostalgic. And I would say they achieved exactly that. So, in the end, I would say Rodan and Jet Jaguar as figures are certainly not a bad addition to the collection. Now I actually am curious to see how the rest turned out as well, but that's for further down the line. Anyway, just figured I'd share some quick thoughts on these guys. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.
Congratulations, you reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to consider supporting us on Patreon. Of course, the other way to support us is to go to Amazon and check out our books, Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Also check the description for links to DeviantArt and other platforms we operate. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.